And welcome back, fourth and long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another episode in my Aussie supporter series. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a nice friend of mine who lives not too far from me normally, now in Iowa, originally from Australia, Mr. Jason Hosty. Jason, how you doing, sir?
Donnie, good to see you, mate. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Great to hear from you. I mean, we hooked up when you found the Des Moines Roosters doing your podcast there for a while, that you were doing the Iowa podcast, the I Want to Talk Sports podcast. Unfortunately, it no longer exists, but we've kept a nice friendship from there. So I know you pretty well, but some of the people may not know you who are watching this episode. So I always kind of like letting you kind of have a little bit of a quick bio on who Jason is and who you are away from footy.
Away from footy, yeah. Well, married, a couple of kids. I moved over here 2004, settled down in Iowa. A love of all sports, cricket, baseball, footy, of course, and just take it on the stride. I've been working at the same place for about 15 years. So down there in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I live closer to Iowa City now, but the kids are growing, getting stronger, getting bigger. So I've got to watch my mouth in front of them now. So the tides have turned, mate.
It's the way life goes sometimes when it goes. So this podcast is mostly about footy. So let's kind of rewind just a little bit and just talk about what's your favorite thing about the game of football?
Interesting question, mate. Like, I've heard you brought this up, so I've sort of had a little bit of time to think, and quite honestly, I didn't really have 100% answer, Donnie. I will say, though, it's a game, as others suggested, for everybody, and not just talking about different sort of sizes in blokes or women, but just different cultures, different, the atmosphere, the way you brought up. Like when I'm 44 years old now, so when I was around about playing, the under 9s, under 10s, 13s, a bit of the biggest soccer community was in Melbourne. And then we noticed a lot of more of the, say, ethnic groups would come and play our game, quote unquote, right? So it was good to see. So the Italians, the Yugoslavs, the Macedonians, I mean, you look at the blokes, Dacos, for instance, from Barassi, Ange Christou, Mark Rasciuto, fellas like that playing and getting absolutely fantastic, being some of the guns of the game alongside, the Roy Sarts, Kevin Bartlett, James Hurd, Matty Lloyd, Tony Lockett, to name some, say, I guess, the Anglo-Saxon sort of names. But just a game for everyone. As far as the footy during the week, I mean, Saturday, you'd look forward to Saturday or Friday. Most of the time when I was growing up, it was Saturday. So let's say if your team lost, like the Tigers lost, you'd spew about it until about Wednesday. And then next thing you know, all right, you'd get over that. You'd look forward to next Saturday. And you just keep moving and you look ahead to the next game. Okay, how am I going to get there? Make arrangements to go see the match, because that's all you really cared about. And it's just a love that you don't even really understand why you love it, I suppose. It's just in you.
Not a bad thing, and to each their own. Everybody falls in love with the game for a different reason. So let's stay kind of back in track. And for me, I love this question. Can you remember your earliest footballing memory?
My earliest footy memory, mate, I reckon my dad used to take us out to Waverley. And as a young fella, I remember being about 50 metres behind him in the first minute of getting out of the car, because we'd have to get there early. We were members, VFL Park, Waverley. And he'd be hammering towards the gates to get in there. And I'd be struggling. I'd have me bag, and he'd have his coffee in his bag and stuff. He'd be already in the stadium somewhere. I'd have to walk in. I'd have my little pass, because we're all, like I said, we're all members, so we had our own badge. I reckon that was the oldest footy memories, trying to keep up with the old man getting into VFL Park. And funny enough, I wasn't at his funeral, but I said the same thing on a little sheet of paper for the person reading out some notes at his funeral, just to have one last dig at him for not waiting up for me to get into the way.
Not a problem. That's a cool
you'd
memory.
Get in there, and finally you'd find him halfway through the first quarter. Oh, I saved your seat. Thanks, mate.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So the people that are watching the YouTube video, they kind of already know you mentioned it just a little bit, but I gotta ask, what's your club and why is it that you support them?
Richmond Tigers is my club. And I know I follow them because I remember telling me dad and my brother, maybe my mum was in the room as well. I said, mate, because they were calling Mark and my brother and dad calling supporters, Donnie. So I said, oh, Tigers are better than Magpies. And I can't remember if it was because the Tigers were better in that, mate, because I was born in 76, so maybe it took 3 or 4 years, around about when the Tigers were beating them in the granny or up near the top, so to speak. Then again, so were Collingwood. So I remember saying that. I remember telling him I'm a Richmond supporter now, and I barracked for Richmond. So basically, I was told him that's how it was going to be. I can't remember what backlash I got. Mum was a Footscray supporter. She was from the western suburbs. Funny enough, Footscray. But my cousins are Essendon supporters. They lived in the East Keilor region of Melbourne. So we had it all. So me sort of darting out by myself, becoming a Richmond supporter wasn't really that, I don't think that big of a deal at the time. Could have been, but I didn't know it was going to be 37 years of pain. But at the time, hey, good things come to those who wait, you reckon, Donnie?
Definitely, for sure. So it sounds like your family's a little bit of everything. So I gotta ask, being in here in the States, have you got your family members currently into the Richmond Tigers, or are they kind of still hands off when it comes to the footy?
No, we're all Tigers. We're all Tigers for the first. Well, one's 15, one's 12. So for the first, actually, every year since they've been born, I've bought them memberships for Richmond. So it was either a junior membership, and it was all through mum. We used to get it sent to mum's house, and she would send over the gift package with the the little Tiger Cub plate, the spoon. You get your membership card. I didn't pay for one myself. I just thought I'd get the boys involved, so I've kept all their cards throughout the years. It got a little bit more expensive over time, but mum would jump in and go, okay, I'll buy them for their Christmas presents or their birthday presents, or whatever their birthday's in January. So she's kept that trend rolling. So they've been members of Tigerland for, well, the oldest one, 15 years, the younger one, 12. So when I go home or if I buy something online or whatever, I just use their membership card to get a bit of a discount at Punt Road, mate. So that works out well.
Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. I know I have the same thing with my Swans membership. If I ever want to buy anything from the Swan shop, I pop that membership thing in there, and it helps me out a little bit. And it's
love them.
Yeah, well, in the shipping, if you do it correctly, it cannot be too bad. It's a little bit, but it's not too bad. So we'll stay in the past a little bit. Can you remember the first Richmond Tigers thing you ever were given or bought?
I reckon it would have been one of those little cartoon books that say I barracked for Richmond. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. A lot of people would know what I'm talking about. They had one for every team, so it'd have the theme song in it, a little thing about the kid going to the footy. I bet it was either that or a scarf. I still have a scarf that I had since I was in grade 2, I reckon, at school. The old school tie, black and yellow, it says Tigers, and still got the little badge on that mum's sewed in that says Hosking on it because she didn't want it to get mixed up with probably one other Richmond supporter in my school at the time, because it was mainly a Collingwood area and a few others, but still got the scarf, and I've had that for absolute donkey's years, mate. So the little book, maybe a little plush toy, one of those mascot toys, or a scarf would have been the first thing I ever got, I reckon.
Awesome. So, I mean, you and I have had discussions about this. I think you've been fascinated in how much I tell you that I wake up at 4 a.m. to watch the games. I consider myself a diehard, and for some people it has a negative connotation. So I like hearing people explain their fandom or why they support, but how passionate they are a supporter. So could you real quickly give me an explanation of how passionate of a supporter are you of the Richmond Tigers? I know, again, being over here in the States, it's not always easy because of the time difference.
No, it's not easy. And before I'd left, when I was younger, it was definitely the only thing I cared about. Like I may have suggested before, find a way to go to the match with somebody. Until I was at least 2021. Like, and if it was an interstate game, we'd organise, sit around a mate's joint and watch it. But if not, we were going to every match, whether it was out at Waverley, which is cold, the other side of Melbourne, quite honestly. MCG was easy to get to, fit the windy hills and whatever. But I guess I did get over here, mate, and it took a while to find me sort of AFL feed again. I didn't have the channels. Of course, I'd be on the phone, and then I had a talking to mum or my brother and a couple of me Richmond mates, how they going or whatever. Of course, it was on the internet, so I used to sit up and listen to the 3AW broadcast or the Triple M, maybe whoever was doing it at the time. I'd sit up and listen to it when I couldn't get the audio. Finally, they started playing the footy on the TV as Fox Sport. Fox Soccer Plus might have been the first sort of extra dish I got to watch it. So I definitely had that installed, started watching footy again, got the love back. And nowadays it's one of those, okay, it's on Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2 now. We've got the app that shows all the games. Sit down and we can watch the Monday night on the couch TV shows and whatever. So it's something's always going on with footy to see how the Tigers are going, or, you know, even the Bulldogs, and, you know, talking to you about the Swans. My mate down there in Jacksonville, he's a saner. So he never lets me forget either. So as far as Facebook goes and the Twitters and online, and you call up a mate on a Friday night and he's cracking on about the footy. It's just, yeah, it's like I said, man, it's in you, and it'll never leave. And the passion, especially the last 3 or 4 years, the way the Tigers have handled themselves, oh mate, it's definitely revved me up for more.
Definitely. And your club has been one of those. They've been the gold standard bearer the last 4 or 5 seasons for sure. So we'll stay in the past just a little bit longer. Can you remember the first Tigers game you ever attended?
I don't think so. It would have most likely been out at Waverley. Again, going back to that VFL Arctic Park, whatever it's called. But I did go to a lot of games at the Whitten Oval, and I can't even remember what it was called before the Whitten Oval, because it was never always the Whitten Oval. The Western Oval, maybe, out there on Barclay Street, Footscray, because my nanny just lived up the road. And or either that, it wouldn't have been Windy Hill, even though my cousin was an Essendon supporter. But yeah, probably the Western, out there at Footscray or Waverley would have been the first two. I never did go to a match at Punt Road. I'm old, but not that old. It would have definitely been a Collingwood or a Footscray versus Richmond match for sure. I do remember a couple of brutal games later on. They wouldn't have been my first ones, where I went with my brother and dad to Victoria Park, and they sat me in a seat. And I'll tell you what, I couldn't have even been any more than 10 or 11. And I'm getting yelled at. I'm in my Richmond scarf, my jumper. And it was the most hostile, feral place I've ever been. I'm crying and that, because grown men yelling at me. And Richmond down by 10 goals. Like, what are you yelling at me for? You blokes are doing all right. My team's getting flogged. Leave me alone.
Oh, that's a great story. I love it. So this is a question I love asking, because for some people it's the proverbial who's your favorite child type of moment. Can you think of your favorite player of the past from Richmond, and do you have a favorite player currently on the Richmond list?
Yeah, Matty Richardson would have to be my favourite. There was a few that came and went when he was playing still. Yeah, Nathan Brown, I liked him coming over from the Bulldogs. Matty Rogers, loved him. Not old enough to really get involved with how good Kevin Bartlett was, although I do remember him playing on the tally. So, you know, so looking forward to more teen years. I did have Matty Rogers on the back. Matty Richardson had a jumper of his, loved him. And of course, you can't go wrong with saying Dusty Martin as far as where we're at today as being your favourite player. I mean, if you were to say anyone else, okay, you'd have strong feelings of someone else, but Dusty Martin, I mean, you can't kid yourself. What an absolute champion.
Hard to argue with that. An absolute legend for sure. Now, as we've kind of discussed earlier, the club has seen a lot of very good days in the recent past times, but I got to ask, what's your most memorable moment as a Richmond supporter?
The most memorable moments would have to be 2017 grand final, mate. It's got to be hands down. I from when I was living over here, and one of the first things I said to my wife when I married her, I said, okay, there's one hitch. If Richmond make the grand final, I'm going. That was a yes. So 13 years later, when they won that game against Geelong to get them in, of course, it was a twilight game. So I've had so many Chardonnays or beers or whatever at the time in the morning, the missus had to get on and buy me a ticket. Left Wednesday, arrived Melbourne time Friday, came back here on Tuesday. So what a weekend. But that was just a superb, unbelievable weekend. Tigers lifted the cup. I was there. Another good thing about that, mate, is back in 82, when Richmond were in it last against Carlton, me mum dragged me to Ballarat, country town in Victoria, to watch calisthenics. And I said, can't I go to the footy? How come I can't go to the grand final? She goes, well, I'll make sure you're at the next one. And Donnie, this is one of my favourite stories of all time, mate, because 37 years later, I'd already booked a trip with the family to come back for that Christmas, the end of 2017. So I'd already spent a little bit of cash for 4 people to go there. Called up Mum. I said, Mum, I'm a little skint now because I'm already coming. I said, reckon I could just borrow some money. I said, I could probably pay for the flight, but could you pay for the ticket to get in off someone that was selling it? So she said, absolutely. And I was off on the Wednesday, got there, picked up the ticket off one of my brother's mates that picked him up from the city, works for a tyre place. Saturday rolled around. I was there with my cousin in the morning, who also I'd known since obviously all my life, all his life, all my life. But we used to go to the footy. He's an Essendon supporter. Having some beers with him before we went to the ground, and just it's even hard to describe how memorable it was, and of course the outcome and everything. And high as a kite, over the moon, whatever cliches, mate. It was there, and get chills still thinking about it now. Absolutely.
Just what a performance. The utter performance of that final series, and then to get the cup and to see a drought ended there was fantastic. And Dusty, again, the legend that was Dusty, started and really has been solidified over the last few years. So we'll go to the present now a little bit. And this is one of those, for some people, this could be a tiny bit of a scab. The season didn't kind of roll out the way many Richmond supporters probably thought it would at the start of the year. I think injuries really hurt Richmond this year, which it hadn't been in previous seasons. So really quickly, kind of what were your thoughts on the season? I mean, I don't think anybody expected Dusty to get hurt the way he did with the lacerated kidney and misses 5 of the last 6 games of the season. So real quickly, what were your thoughts on the Tiger season last year?
I think it was more or less, it didn't start well. There was the off-field drama with Damo, and just whatever his personal issues were. There was a couple of people that there's always some moans and groans. I don't care if you hear that everything's fine at Tigerland. It was all cliche, it's all good. This has come out with some relations between the coach and a staff member. There's always a little bit of salt to go with the pepper, Donnie, I reckon. It may not have had on-field issues, but going back to it, just say it didn't. So let's go ahead and jump forward when the finals are up for grabs. And I told you, I said the Tigers still can win it. I actually liked West Coast at the time. That was a bum. You told me Melbourne were going to win the flag. I guess I should listen to you more when it comes to that, mate. But, you can't lose. I mean, Kochi was out for a bit. Edwards was gone. Bolter, bloody Broad, and a few of the other guys that just when crunch time came, our guys couldn't even be on the pitch to help us, be on the field to help us. And would we have excelled and gone to the other level with all them? Perhaps. I don't know, but watching Melbourne just play the way they did, no, probably would have ended up finishing around the 5th or bumming out, one of the finals. But I didn't mind it. I definitely look forward to next season when we've got a full kit back and maybe pick up 1 or 2 in the off season that can help drill through. Iron out some creases and whatever. So, I mean, the Tigers aren't finished. The Tigers definitely aren't finished. We'll definitely be, hopefully top 4, but we'll see, mate. We'll see.
Well, in my end of the year podcast, I said, honestly, the team that scares me the most going to the off season was Richmond, because not only do they get most of those injuries back. Yes, you lose Hooley and Broad to retirement, which is fine. but you get Robbie Tarrant in, so that fills one of your spots, and you've got so many draft picks in the top 20, in the top 30 or 40, that Richmond's going to be able to restock their youth that they've kind of been pillaged a little bit over the last few seasons. So for me, the Richmond supporters, there's a lot of positives going into this offseason because you're going to bring in some talent. I think you should be healthier. Hopefully Dusty is back to his normal weight. He did lose like 12 kilos. It was insane how much weight he lost because of that. But I just, Richmond scares me. Like, there's a lot of really good teams going into the next season. Getting into the 8's going to be an adventure next season because Melbourne's going to be good. The Western Bulldogs should be good. Richmond should be good. Sydney potentially could be good. GWS is still pretty solid. I mean, I think Frio's going to take a jump up this year. Geelong's always good. I mean, there's 9-10 teams there that are going to be fighting for the finals. So it's going to be a slog. It's going to be a slog to make the finals next year. I think it's going to be very, very competitive. I'm looking forward to it. So we kind of talked about it a tiny bit. Have you been keeping an eye on their off season? And if so, what are your thoughts on them?
I'm one of these fellas, mate, that doesn't really drill into off-season stuff. Not this early anyway. After the footy season finishes, or even with any sport, to be quite honest, I'm a baseball fan and don't really care what they're doing. I'll watch the trades, and if we get a big free agent, yes. But when they start arriving at spring training, or if the Tigers, the early summer days where they're just running around, and who have we got, and the games up in wherever they play them. I don't really care too much about Donnie, to be honest. But come round one, the light goes off in my head and I'm all 100% action. But as far as the off season, no, I don't really. It's having said that, I'm not too far away from it when I speak to friends of mine that are, because they'll tell me something, and of course I'll reply, oh yeah, why, what's going on, or who's he or who's she, sort of thing. And yeah, so you're never far away from it. Me personally, though, I'm not much of an interweb scanner for information. I just watch it when it's on telly and listen to it when it's on radio, and let the pundits do the talking for me, mate.
There's nothing wrong with that, and you'll find out eventually once the season gets closer, for sure. So I'm one of those. I've seen this question asked by a lot of people, but I'm never big with it. Do you have expectations for next season? Like, are your thoughts of we should be a finals contender team, or are we gonna fall short? Do you have expectations, or you just kind of let it go where it's gonna go?
Definitely in where Richmond are at the moment and what they've done the last, not this year, but the previous three or four, there's expectations there, because if there's not, hopefully it wasn't just okay, that was a nice run and let's fall back to where we were and wait another 35 years. It's time to go now. We know how to win. Benny Gale, Peggy, they've figured out ways to win. They know how to win now. Whereas for those many years, they were falling short because they just didn't have it. They were lost somewhere. The Tigers weren't there with the other clubs. I remember saying all these years went by, apart from the Melbournes. Even Melbourne made the granny in 2000, but before that, Richmond hadn't even been close. St Kilda, you feel bad for them, but they still haven't got over the line. But they've been in it, and they're drawn with Collingwood. There was always, every other team was always up there, no matter what sort of, at least close to winning or lost it. But Richmond were nowhere. Okay, they might have made the 5 or the 8, whatever you'd call it at the time, but they never looked like beating the elite, nowhere even near it. And it was annoying. So as far as expectations, yeah, I expect them to never let this script go, Donnie. If they happen to fall a little bit like this year because of some sustained injuries, some other stuff, okay, you put it towards, all right, a bit of bad luck. Our guns got hurt or we were worn out or whatever. But no, there better be expectations from everyone in Tigerland now, including the supporters, to never let this go, because why should it? You shouldn't have to go back to 13th on the ladder and then try to get back up. You do what you need to do. You know how to win. Let's keep winning.
Completely agree with that. So I think, with you being a baseball fan, and for me, the American sport fan of me, I think we all love that thought of being the general manager, being able to make the moves, being able to make the trades. So I'm gonna have some fun. I love this question. Right now, I'm gonna install you as the list manager of the Richmond Tigers. The other 17 clubs are completely open. You can get any player from any club that you want. Who's the one player that you get first and why?
At this stage, and I have had a couple of days to think about this, to be quite honest with everyone. Clayton Oliver from Melbourne. Clayton Oliver, young, strong inside, good clearance to the footy. I believe Cochin won't be able to do it forever, so he would slide into a Kochi role. And what a gun, and redheads are the best. Remember that for a fact, Donnie.
Love it.
Like someone to replace Basher wouldn't be bad as well. I had a little bit of time to think about, like, look around and sort of suss. Yeah, so was it Lockie Whitfield I'd written down to replace Basher? Doesn't mind a goal every now and then. From a player like Heath Shaw in his prime, I'd definitely take him too. But Clayton Oliver, mate, I reckon get him in the yellow sash and we'll be right where we need to be. But champion, good young footy player from Victoria, country Victoria, mind you. So they're always going to turn out good, and he's proved he has.
Very, very good one. So this is another one that's kind of sparked up over the last couple of years, with the last 2 seasons having the grand final outside of Melbourne. So I've heard some people make the discussions, and I always want to hear people's thoughts on this. Are you one of those that the grand final should be in Melbourne at the MCG every time, no questions? Or is there a little part of you after Perth and Brisbane that maybe we should think about making the grand final a traveling grand final?
First thing I'll say is, if they make it a travel grand final, I just don't like the hot weather. The hot weather. That was another point of mine. But the night grand final, and the reason I stumbled there and said hot weather, mate, is Melbourne's weather in September, the last weekend of September, is perfect. It is perfect. I believe up north in Queensland it'd be too hot. It wouldn't be, the blokes wouldn't play to their potential, so you'd have to have a night game up there. Same with even Perth. I haven't been to Perth, but you get the idea that it's pretty warm and you got the wind. So maybe they need to have the night grand final there. I didn't like the night grand final at all. I think it should always be in Melbourne. Just it feels more like granny day when you wake up, 2 o'clock, 2:30. You've got the blokes kicking footies over the Yarra River in town. You've got other stuff going on. You've got Braves the day before. It just feels like granny day. And all right, maybe that's me being in my 40s and always seen it that way. Just the last couple of years being at night, Richmond even won one of them in Queensland there. But I think it's just a perfect day, 2:30 on a Saturday in Melbourne. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And like I've mentioned before, man, I mean, you could take it to Adelaide and people would travel to Adelaide. It wouldn't be a bad sort of game. That'd be, I mean, if one of those 2 teams, then it'd be amazing. I mean, the atmosphere would be fantastic. So taking nothing away from that. And the weather is probably pretty similar as well. But I wouldn't want it to go to Sydney because I don't think they've got a proper footy field that's big enough. Like I said, mentioned before, Brisbane, the other place is just too hot, and they have to have it at night, and they wouldn't. Players would be drained. I mean, you've seen when you watch a day game up there. Lee Matthews said it years ago when he first started coaching Brisbane Lions, could have been Brisbane Bears, can't remember. He said, "No, it's criminal to have players playing up here on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon during the heat. It's too hot." And when I went down to have a run with you guys down there in Des Moines, it was in July or August, and I was knackered after 20 minutes, mate. And I had to go and hide in the shade and drink 2 gallons of water. So, and of course, I'm not fit, but these blokes, even being fit as they are, they've got to go hide in the shade and they're guzzling the waters and the Gatorade. And I just think Melbourne's just the perfect fit. And if there's nothing wrong with it, just keep it there. By all means, we know we can't get a cricket pitch proper for the Boxing Day test, so we may as well have the grand final footy and have all the eyes on us then.
All right. I love the argument. That's and everybody has a different answer. I mean, some people have thought about it. Like I said, it's a very interesting thing to think about. Now, the MCC's got the 50-year contract, so I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon, but it's an interesting thing to discuss. Now, I've said it through many of the episodes. I'm a huge AFLW fan. I think the sport is growing quickly. I think the girls are getting better and better and better. So for me, have you been keeping an eye on the AFLW? And if you have, what are your thoughts on Richmond last year?
It's another thing that I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to be honest, mate. I do know there's a couple of Hoskins in there playing for the Tigers. What was it, Sarah and Jess?
Yep, the Twins.
Probably the only thing I really know about it. Like, I'm not totally against it. I just have enough sort of trouble with work and getting up in the mornings and having free time to watch. Well, take the words out, but the blokes play the first team. Sort of to my niece, when I was home last, she said she's into the footy and playing. So I mean, I look forward to watching more. I just haven't had time, basically, mate. I'll put it as that. I'd love to have more time to watch it and keep up to date, but just haven't, to be totally honest with you.
And that's fine. And to each his own, but I'll definitely keep an eye on it because the one thing I think I've told a lot of people is the fact is that all the 18 clubs in the AFL will have an AFLW team season after next, which I'm super excited about. I think that's absolutely fascinating. Now, the last few questions here are some fun ones because I like having a little bit of fun towards the end of my episode. I know you've been over here for a while, but when you did go to the footy, what was your go-to food when you went to the footy?
Food, now we're talking. Bucket of chips, mate. I reckon. Bucket of chips, sausage roll. I did. The old joke was you'd get a cold pie off the bloke to walk around with the pie. So I was always a little bit hesitant to grab a pie, but since they updated their little shops there, the cafes, and they had the heat lamps, I'll grab one from in there. But bucket of chips, I'll reach for straight away. A cherry ripe or a picnic candy bar, and a sausage roll. And, of course, a couple of Carlton drafts, mid-strength, if you don't mind, on a Friday night.
Sounds fantastic. Now, and another one that I like to ask is that when you did go to the footy, where was your ideal place to sit and watch the footy?
Ideally, was in behind the goals with the cheer squad. I'd been with the cheer squad for a bunch of years, actually. When I was younger, I walked up there and asked them how do you go about it. Of course, when I got into work and I wasn't going as much, I didn't sit with them. Wouldn't sit in the section with them, but yeah, I was there with the flags and the pom poms, whatever you call them these days. Bit later on into the mid-20s, so the early 20s, mid-20s, before I sort of moved over here, I'd stand up on the terraces right at the very back of the cheer squad. A lot of blokes would start singing and chanting. It was easy to walk down the stairs, grab yourself another cold one, carry on a Saturday like a larrikin would, and barrack for the Tigers from there and get a few sort of songs going. So that was my favourite spot, mate, down there with the rest of the army. Definitely, 100%.
Awesome. That's absolutely great. And to each his own, everybody's a little bit different. So I love hearing just where I'm trying to figure out when I do go, where's the best place to sit to watch the footy, no matter where it's at. So I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm making notes on these. You kind of know this, like we've chatted about this. This channel is primarily an American channel. It does NFL, different things like that. But occasionally some people will click on these videos that are American. So I thought for a little bit of fun, if they've gotten this far, why don't you give me just a real quick pitch on why do you think an American fan should be a Richmond Tigers supporter?
Theme song in the competition. You hear it a couple of times pre-game. You hear it 6 or 7 times after the game, hopefully, for a win. And, I mean, you talk Melbourne clubs, big clubs, 4 or 5 of them. Okay, maybe not the most flags, but there's so much history in it. East Melbourne with Richmond, with just not even anything to do with footy, mate. Just like some of the painters and dockers stories, a few of those, underground sort of places alongside of Carlton. Richmond and Carlton have always got the ties to fuel them things. So if you like grit, if you like history on and off the field, mate, and you love theme songs, then go for the Tigers because you can't go wrong.
Awesome. That is great. And I love ants. That's awesome. This is my favorite question of all, just because I love hearing the different answers. And this will be the last question I ask. And that's favorite game of footy you've ever seen, whether live or on TV. Favorite game of footy.
Been waiting for you to ask this, mate. 1995 semi-final against Essendon. Me, my mate Webber were there. My mate Tomo couldn't make it because he had to work. He's still spewing. 5 goals down at half time. But Essendon, they stuck in Matty Knights had an incredible first half. Essendon, they scored like 4 goals in the last 3 minutes of the second quarter. So we're down by 5 goals. Tigers come out second quarter. Scotty Turner's sitting there. He got his bump on. Out about three fellas. They're all crying about it. You can tell these Essendon people are starting to whinge about, oh, they're hitting our players. Scotty Turner ran through about three of them, laying blokes down. Tough as nails, this one was, right? Anyway, Tigers end up back, winning the game by a couple of goals, 13 points, if I'm not mistaken. John Northey comes out, takes the piss out of Kevin waving his jacket around because Sheedy had done that 2 weeks prior in Perth, I believe it was, against the West Coast. And then, of course, it got the crowd up involved, and we're all doing it. Maybe a week later, we went out to that bloody VFL Park Waverley joint, lost to Geelong by about 130 points. Even that, 10 goals down at half-time, the whole wing of Waverley is singing the Richmond theme song when we're down by 10 goals a week after we beat Essendon in that semi-final, man. And, oh, yeah, that was definitely the best game of footy I've seen. Yeah, 2017 was absolutely my favourite game because of what happened. But this game was the best. It was amazing. Daffy, Scotty Turner, Matty Knights, Rogers. Oh, it was just great. I love that team. I love that year.
Fantastic. And another good one. And it's just great to hear the different stories. So Jason, this has been an awesome conversation. I'm glad we finally got to have a chance to sit down and talk footy. I know we bounced back and forth last year after I put out my US based supporter series. And you're like, mate, if you ever want to talk Richmond. So I had to have you on as my Richmond supporter. So thank you so much for hopping on. It's been a pleasure hearing your stories about Richmond.
Donnie, appreciate you asking me, mate. It was a lot of fun. And yes, we finally did it. And love it. Love it. If you want to chat again, I'll come down in the morning. We'll have a beer and we'll chat more footy. I love it.
Sounds like fun. I know we'll probably hop off camera and talk a little more cricket too. I know we were chatting before off camera a little bit about the Cricket World Cup and something we have in common chatting about. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode in my Aussie fan supporter series. Jason, again, have a wonderful night, mister.
Cheers, Donnie.
Well, cheers. And we will talk to you guys again soon when I have another episode coming very soon.